Welcome to FIC Directive 9, Crypto Asset Travel Rule Implementation, in compliance with the requirements of the Financial Intelligence Center Act. Welcome everyone to this discussion. Today we're going to be looking at something pretty big happening in South Africa when it comes to crypto. A new directive is coming out that's going to change how crypto transfers are handled. So if you're at all into crypto, whether you're trading or just holding, or even if you're just watching what's happening with fintech, you really need to know about this.
Yeah, for sure. This isn't just like some small tweak, this is a pretty fundamental change and it's all driven by these international standards. So what we're going to do today is unpack this thing they're calling the travel rule for crypto assets. We'll look at why they're doing this and, most importantly, what it actually means for you. And the info we're working with here comes straight from the source, the official Directive 9 document, and a recent press release from the FIC, the Financial Intelligence Center. What we're trying to do here is cut through all that regulatory jargon and just give you the core of what's going on.
Okay, so the travel rule, it sounds like something about border control, but for your Bitcoin, can you kind of break it down for us? Like, what is this thing in simple terms?
Okay, so think about it this way. You know how when you do a regular wire transfer with like normal money, there's always a bunch of info that has to go with the funds, right? Like who sent it and who's getting it? Well, the travel rule is basically taking that same idea and applying it to crypto assets. Like if you're sending Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever, it's not just the crypto itself that's moving around. There's now a digital paper trail attached to it.
Oh, I see. So it's like adding a layer of transparency to these crypto transfers.
Exactly. And the big reason they're doing this is to try to make it way harder to use crypto for all those shady activities. You hear about things like money laundering, terrorist financing, even stuff like funding, weapons, proliferation. They want to be able to track where the money is going. And both the directive and that FIC press release make it clear that South Africa is jumping on board to align with these FATF standards. That's the Financial Action Task Force, by the way. They're kind of the global watchdogs for this stuff.
That makes sense. I mean, you can't really fight financial crime if you have no idea where the money's going, right?
Yeah.
So who exactly is this going to affect? Who in South Africa? Like, who needs to be paying close attention to this Directive 9?
Well, it's mainly aimed at what they call accountable institutions. These are the businesses that handle crypto asset transfers, and the big players here are the CASPs, the crypto asset service providers.
It's a CASP. So we're talking about like crypto exchanges, things like that?
Yeah, exactly. Any business that's in the business of exchanging crypto for regular money, or even just exchanging between different types of crypto, or if they hold your crypto for you. Those are all CASPs. And the FIC has made it very clear that these companies have had to register as accountable institutions since December 19th, 2022. It's all under Item 22 of Schedule 1 of the FIC Act.
Okay. So any exchange you're using here in South Africa, they're going to have to play by these rules.
Yeah, definitely. And there's more since December 1st, 2023. Even businesses that just give advice about crypto or act as middleman for crypto transactions, they also have to be registered. That's under Item 12 of Schedule 1 of the FIC Act. This came about because crypto assets are now officially classified as financial products under something called FA's Act. That's the Financial Advisory and Intermediary Services Act, which basically covers all financial advice in South Africa.
So it would be like platforms that do crypto lending, or if you're getting investment advice about crypto, stuff like that.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And it doesn't even matter where the clients are located. As long as the CASP is operating out of South Africa, these rules apply.
Gotcha. So even if a South African crypto company is dealing with someone overseas, this still affects them. Okay, so let's dive into the details then. What exactly do these CASPs have to do when they're the ones starting the transfer? The directive calls them ordering crypto asset service providers.
All right, so anytime there's a qualifying transfer, the ordering CSP has to send certain information about the originator. That's the person sending the crypto, and they have to send this info to the receiving CSP. Now, a qualifying transfer is basically any crypto transaction that happens within a business relationship, and that includes anything over zero value.
Okay. So what kind of information are we talking about? Like, do I need to send my whole life story every time I send some Bitcoin?
Not quite your whole life story, but there's specific info they need. So if you're the one sending the crypto, the ordering CASP needs your full name. If you're a South African citizen, they'll need your ID number. If you're not from South Africa, they need your passport number or whatever your official ID is in your country along with your birth date. And then they also need your residential address if they can get it. If not, they at least need your country of birth.
Okay, so it's kind of like that. Know your customer stuff you see with banks and stuff. KYC. What about if it's not a person sending the crypto, but like a company or some other organization?
Yeah. So if it's a legal entity that's sending the crypto, the CASP needs their registered name, their official registration number, and their registered business address.
And then, of course, they need all the crypto-specific details, right? Like wallet addresses and stuff.
You got it. They absolutely need the originator's distributed ledger address. That's basically your crypto wallet address. And if you're sending from an account you have with that CASP, they also need your account number. If you're not using an account, they need a unique reference number for the transaction so they can tie it back to you.
All right, so that's quite a bit of info. Now what if I'm just sending a small amount of crypto, like say it's under R5000? Do all those same rules still apply?
Well, for single transactions under R5000, they ease up a bit on the information requirements for both the person sending and the person receiving. The CASP only needs their full names, their distributed ledger addresses, and their crypto account numbers if they have them. If not, they need a unique transaction reference. It's basically just to simplify things for those smaller day-to-day crypto transactions.
That makes sense. It'd be a bit much to have to go through all that for every little transfer, but do they still verify all that info even for the small amounts?
That's interesting. Actually, for these sub 5,000 Rand transfers, the CASP doesn't have to verify the information unless something seems fishy. Like if they suspect there might be some money laundering or terrorist financing going on, then they need to check. But otherwise, they don't have to go through the whole verification process. It's kind of a risk-based approach, recognizing that most of these smaller transactions are legit.
Yeah, that seems like a good balance between security and convenience. Now, the directive also mentions that the sending CASP has to do some due diligence on the receiving CASP. What's the point of that?
Oh, that's really important. It's all about making sure the whole process is legit. So before a CASP sends the crypto and all that information, they need to check out the CASP that's going to receive it. Basically, they need to make sure that the receiving CASP is going to keep that information confidential, and they also need to make sure they're not sending it to some shady company that's involved in illegal activities or is under sanctions from the UN Security Council. It's all about preventing transfers to platforms that might be compromised or just straight up illegal.
So it's like a know your business partner rule for crypto companies?
Yeah, you could say that, but it's not like they have to do this huge investigation every single time. Once they've vetted a particular CASP, they're good to go, but if something comes up, like if there's any suspicion of illegal activity or new risks pop up, then they got to do their due diligence again, and they should be checking up on the regular partners periodically anyway.
Makes sense. You gotta see on top of things. And what happens if this sending CASP just can't get all that required information? Can they still go ahead with the transfer?
Nope. The directive is very clear about this. If the ordering CASP can't meet all the information requirements, they cannot do the transfer. It's just not allowed. This is why it's so important for them to have really good KYC procedures in place.
Okay, so no cutting corners there. So we covered the sender side of things.
Yeah.
What about the CSPs that are in the middle of a transfer? The ones that the directive calls intermediary crypto asset service providers. What do they have to do?
Their main job is basically to keep the information flowing. They're responsible for making sure that all the info about the sender and the receiver gets passed along to the next CASP in the chain. It could be another intermediary or it could be the final recipient. They're basically the information couriers.
Gotcha. So they're like the middlemen, making sure the info gets where it needs to go.
Exactly. And they also have to try to spot any cross-border transfers that are missing info, and they need to have clear procedures in place for what to do. If they find one, they need to decide whether to let the transfer go through, put it on hold, or send it back to the sender. Their risk management and compliance program has to lay out exactly what to do in each situation.
So they can't just ignore it if something's missing, they need to have a plan. Okay, so now let's look at the receiving end. The recipient crypto asset service providers. What are their obligations?
So the directive says that the beneficiary, the person who's actually getting the crypto, is considered their client for that particular transfer. So that means the recipient CASP has to verify their identity just like they would for any other client. It's all in line with the FIC and their internal risk management and compliance program.
So they have to do their own checks on the receiver, even if the transfer came from another exchange.
Yep, that's right. And if it's a transfer under R5000 that's coming from a high-risk country or a country that's under extra scrutiny, they specifically have to make sure that the beneficiary information is accurate.
Okay, so it sounds like every CASP involved has to play their part in making sure the information is correct and gets where it needs to go. Now, when does all this information have to be sent? Can they send it after the crypto's already gone through?
No, the timing is really important here. The directive says that ordering and intermediary CSPs have to send the sender and receiver information before or at the same time as the crypto transfer. They can send it in batches, to make things more efficient. But sending it afterwards is a no-go. They call that post-facto transmission, and it's not allowed.
Gotcha. So it's got to be sent either before the crypto moves or at the same time. Makes sense. Now we're talking about some pretty sensitive personal information here. What about security? How do they have to protect all this data?
Oh yeah, security is a big deal. The directive is very clear that they have to transmit and store this information securely. Confidentiality, integrity, and availability are all super important. They can't let just anyone access this data, and they need to make sure it's accurate and accessible when they need it. Basically, they have to have really strong security protocols in place to be compliant.
Right. So no cutting corners on the security side either. Now what about those unhosted wallets? Those are the wallets where you have full control over your private keys, right? Not like the ones you have on an exchange?
Yeah,
How does the travel rule apply to those?
that's a tricky one. The directive knows that unhosted wallets are different. So it says that if a CASP is sending crypto to a receiving crypto from an unhosted wallet, they have to have special risk-based policies and procedures in place. It's different because there's no CASP on the other end of the unhosted wallet to get and pass on information.
Ah, I see. So they can't just follow the regular, send it to the other CASP rule. So what do these special policies have to cover?
Basically, they have to figure out how they're going to get more information about the unhosted wallet and the people involved in the transaction, especially if it's a large transaction or something seems suspicious. They need to be extra careful with unhosted wallets because they're not as regulated.
Yeah, that makes sense. So basically, they have to be more vigilant. Okay, so let's get to the brass tacks here. When do all these new rules officially kick in, and what happens if a CASP doesn't follow them?
Directive 9 goes into effect on April 30th, 2025, and if a CASP doesn't comply with any part of it, they're going to face administrative sanctions. That's all spelled out in Section 45C of the FIC Act.
Saul says so it's not just a suggestion. Yes, it's the law.
Yeah, exactly. So CASPs need to get ready for this.
Now, this directive didn't just come out of thin air. How does it fit in with all the other crypto regulations both here inside Africa and globally?
This is all part of a bigger trend. Like the FIC press release mentions, we've already seen CASPs having to register with the FIC and crypto assets being classified as financial products. The travel rule is just the next step in bringing South Africa's crypto rules in line with what's happening internationally, especially with the FATF. And the press release also mentions that they did have a consultation process back in April 2024 where people could give their feedback on the proposed directive. So they did take some input from the industry before they finalized it.
So it wasn't just a top-down decision. They did try to get some feedback. And are there any other laws that CASPs still need to worry about on top of this new directive?
Absolutely. The FIC press release makes that very clear. CASPs still have to follow all the other laws that apply to crypto assets, and if they're doing cross-border transactions, they also have to comply with the Currency and Exchanges Act of 1933 and the exchange control regulations that go with it.
So it's getting to be a pretty tightly regulated space. So as we wrap up this deep dive, what do you say is the key takeaway for our listeners about Directive 9?
The main thing to remember is that the travel rule is all about making crypto asset transfers more transparent. It's a big step towards cracking down on financial crimes, and it puts a lot of responsibility on the shoulders of CASPs operating in South Africa. They're going to have to collect and transmit a lot of detailed information about both the senders and receivers of crypto. And this is all happening because of the global push to regulate crypto and bring it more in line with traditional finance when it comes to things like anti-money laundering and counter-terrorism financing.
It sounds like we're going to see more and more regulation in the crypto world going forward.
I think that's a safe bet. And that brings up an interesting question for our listeners to think about. How is all this new regulation going to change the way people and businesses use crypto, and as regulators around the world try to figure out how to deal with these new technologies? What other changes are we going to see in digital finance? It's this balancing act between security regulation and the core ideas of decentralized systems. It's going to be interesting to see how it all plays out.
Definitely food for thought. Thanks for helping us navigate this complex topic. Until next time on The Deep Dive.